Given the season, most of Pelil had been overpowered by all the raging jasmine. Still, I lounged on the couch and took in from an open window a closing flower market and the oil from a fire guild's final act. Adaline had holed up in that maze of mirrors she called a bathroom. Our time after spinting each other into puddles was usually quiet. Alone, I was left to reflect. Her loft overlooked the belly of her studio in a way that always reminded me of the balcony in my family's church. One just held sculptures and paintings and various arrangements of display or purchase. The other, sad people, including, of course, my mother, having been the only one to rebel from Terciona's grace and abandon the chaplain faith. Whenever my recent and foolish attempts at deliberation persuaded me a church was the best place to do so, I was forced to slink in and kneel at night, lest I risk running into them and revitalize her desperate hope I'd rediscovered religion. I leaned out of the window and took in a good whiff. It all seemed so foreign somehow now, the cobblestones of a small square, the pickpocket alleys all leading away, the streets. What a relationship we'd once had. When I'd gotten out of the army, I was on, then off, then on them again, separated mainly by long bouts at the bar. My ill-fated relationship with society wasted no time returning. I tried the whole light-hearted, have-fun attempts that all aborted and buried themselves. The musical festivals were the worst, departing the city in overloaded wagons. I would stand in the swarm, at varying states of discomfort, stranded, drinking, and ultimately wishing I had brought my own horse. These were also the days where I bounced from job to job, usually kicking myself for not having re-enlisted. The sheer number of changes that have passed my eyes makes it hard to believe that I didn't hang up my white sand quiver 100 years ago. The years of peace began. Our land went from Orisala to Relea. The Conqueror was suddenly the municipal one. And a year and a few loose coins later, while I was a stable boy picking up horse shit, we allied with those fig-eaters and marched north to war it out with Sarabandantalith. Do you know what the definition of useless is? I do. It's also the definition of frustration and the occasionally pathetic. It's when a former member of an elite fighting unit realizes he has no other skills. Better judgment had me soon toss the broom and bucket, nay, throw the bucket into splinters and break the broom over a knee. I walked into the recruiters ready to sign my life away, this time with the desperation one can only reach having stared warless life in the face and much preferred war. Yet I was to be subjected to yet another disappointment, perhaps the greatest of them all. The White Sand, most beloved of the Conqueror's men and the scourge of Azad, had been disbanded forever. No need for reconnaissance when the entire Serab campaign was a one-sided carnival of burned huts and dripping swords. As the Years of Peace 2-year anniversary commenced in the street, I was patching leaky roofs. 1 year later, I was the sourest recruit in the entire metropolitan ward. The people surrounding me changed from armed men ensuring their unit's lethal pride to be fattened louts shamelessly preening themselves in front of an audience who'd all grown tired of their harrowing tales about braining pickpockets. 2 years more, I was being fired. "Hand it over, Zevon," Sarge hammered at me. "You know everything, know nothing, prick." My one and only shift sergeant wasn't a bad man, just terribly impatient. That I was sluggishly returning my saber only fueled his wrath. He may have been the occasional target of my discontent, but Sarge had also fought in Palat. Eventually, he had possession of all my gear, allowing the walrus to calm. "You don't follow the rules," he said. "You don't do what you're told. I don't know how you survived in the army, hotshot or not. Maybe you need to use that big bouncing brain of yours, Zevon, and attend some damn school somewhere." Sarge didn't nod when I unloaded on him that I still needed adventure. Sure, some of the weapons were the same, but the jobs, just too damn different. He just fiddled his mustache. His one-liner that followed about duty set me on high. "These jackals," I burst, "on the streets, most need to be run through, like we did in Azad. Hell, Sarge, like I heard you all did plenty down in Palat." At the time, I lived in a festering housing near the entrance to the Parilgotheum. I calmed myself, too. I think I liked Azadis more than the people outside my apartment. Sarge nodded this time, also showing me the door. The fruit of nights spent kneeling in churches is this getting fired memory remains so unusually clear because it's when I was confronted with a sobering fact. Some veterans could adapt back to civilian life. I couldn't. Begrudgingly, I chewed on the old walrus's advice. School, though, was as attractive as rolling in the nearest gutter. Schools attended by adults were for tuition-paying men who swung sickles by day and by night hoped to, one day, do all the landowning. Instead, I invested elsewhere. Handing all my departure pay to a doorman at the pulsing plum baths, I attended the school of the drug-fueled orgy. It may have been my movement. It may have been my body still chiseled by the sharpened edge of white sand days. Knowing what I know now, I believe it was something else. Infinite want, even in infinite abundance. Amidst the swaying flesh, there Adaline saw me. I was whispered to. All I had to do was promise to give her my all, and at all times. The dreariness of life fell to the marble along with her robe. It was an easy promise then to make. Adaline emerged from the bathroom. "The wagon's all set," she said, drying her hair. "Mostly sculptures from Nilgord this time." That I was destined for another trip to Azad in the morning was nothing new. I'd made at least 100 trips back there since working for her. It was also nothing new that she'd now come join me and lay in a robe determined to stay open. What was unusual was her recent outbursts. It was as if she was arguing with someone else living in her head. It was understandable my boss and mistress would be acting a little strange since returning from her last trip. After that fateful orgy, Adaline had hired me as security for her convoys. A muscled pet to protect her investments sounded like a dream. Putting murderous skills once more to good use, my knowledge of customs and terrain served an even more apt purpose, as she'd stricken deals with seemingly every sultan and mullah in Azad. But she sometimes made the trek, too, to ensure her lofty contracts, maybe, or I cringe to think, to ravage the mind of some other man, maybe a whole score of them. Her company had convoys going out at all times. If I were there on that last one, I would have taken scalps, surely. Those damn Azadis, bandits, had chased her wagon right off of a cliff. No paintings to steal if pulverized on a rocky bottom. No Relayan bodies to triumphantly mangle if done so already by a stupendous fall. What a waste. According to her, she jumped off the runaway wagon and hid until a convoy bound for Relaya eventually happened by. No food, no water, that scorching heat. Only a woman like Adaline could tell me she toughed it out and have me believe it. "Wagon's all set," I repeated, in the way I usually did, like I was back in the army and she my stalwart commander. When she put my head in her lap, I knew she wanted to talk. I'd fought there. If anyone could understand her traumas, surely it was I. "When you were in Azad, Arcus, did you learn anything about ghouls?" A little." She detected my amused confusion. "Why, Adaline?" "Oh, I don't know. I just find them fascinating. These desert creatures. Are they dead? Are they alive? Do those delightful children of the night even care?" Of the night, sure, I thought. But delightful? That was a most generous description leveled against beings who purportedly lived near graves and ate rotting corpses. I said, "I know they're supposed to have originated in Azad." "Anything else?" "That's about it," I lied, hoping to steer the conversation back to normalcy. "All that time there," she said, "shooting arrows and hauling that big dick around, and you mean to tell me you never learned anything more?" Well, I've learned loads of things. One of my favorites is there's an especially cunning and contemptuous female ghoul they call Gila. "Get out of my body!" She did it again, that outburst. My rise was met by her palm pressing me down, insisting that I remain. "Adaline, Yes, that's who I am, not this." Her face angered. "Not this good grace of Terciona. There's a chill coming in." That was her expression was back to normal now, making me almost more concerned. Should we shut the window? A woman who'd always been the paragon of poise acting like this, my best judgment compelled me to just keep her talking, though I didn't care much for the subject matter. I said, You know this girl ghoul's name? And her lover's, she said, almost bragged, suppressing another twitch that rallied for an instant, then was gone. Goriel is his name. Her burly accomplice. Legends say that they cause all sorts of mischief throughout the dunes, when not coupling like wild beasts, of course. She began fiddling with my hair, instantly sapping me of my consciousness. Do you know what romance is, Arcus? I don't know what I answered. I trailed off, only noticing at some point her strokes had grown rough, like a distracted owner preening a goat. Filling that ever-ripping rent most enjoyably, defiling the world together. Goriel and Gila. That, my useful chunk of meat. That is romance.